For over 3 years, the people of Syokimau have known 3 words: pollution, sickness, and for some, death. Pollution on the environment by factories, followed by respiratory infections, and then failure by government agencies like NEMA to rein in polluters. And when the regulatory body finally heard their cry, they insist they were once again denied their right to clean air by another government body, the National Environment Tribunal. Their woes were escalated by a private international air quality monitoring company. They have battled in the corridors of justice for close to 2 years, while their lungs continue to be weakened by particles from a polluted environment. Hundreds have developed respiratory problems and tens have succumbed to them.
It was a chest-related problem and nothing could be done.
As they suffocated under the cloud of pollution, polluters were getting richer and expanding their businesses. This is the story of the battle for air and the agencies that escalated the fight. The world is facing a pandemic that has thrown economies into a spin. The number of mortalities is rising. Many companies and factories have been forced to shut down world over. And environmentalists have reported a massive decline in air and water pollution. The earth is simply breathing again. But is it same for Kenya? We are on our way to Syokimau in Machakos County. Before COVID-19, it was the epicenter of industrial pollution from noise, water to air. But even before we hit the area, neighboring Kenya's main gateway, the JKIA, signs are there that we might be looking at a case of increased pollution. Along Mombasa Road, just around the inland container depot, we spot dark and white smoke billow from a factory. Our focus is on a factory in Syokimau that has been on our radar for over a year now. A company that has been polluting the air for years as nearby residents watch helplessly. Its location just after the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And the evidence of a choking atmosphere when you approach Syokimau is overpowering. It is 6 a.m. when we arrive at Syokimau, the estate bordering East Africa's biggest airport, the JKIA. The beautiful homes here have been ravaged by smoke from a nearby steel factory. Dark emissions are rising into the air as we arrive. The noxious emissions coming from the backside of the steel milling entity. It goes on and on, but as the clock ticks, the amount of smoke released starts to reduce slowly, and by the time the minute hand hits 8 o'clock, the smog has disappeared. Joshua Odhiambo Nyakune has been observing the factory for some time now.
Huwa inaendelea kwa sababu inafanya mchana na usiku. Kwa sababu sasa inamaanisha ni kitu ambayo iko. Ni kitu ambayo iko, si ati ni ya kubahatisha. Ile masaa wanatoa moshi mingi ni usiku. Ni usiku. Juu hata hao ni kama wamejua usiku ndio ile wakati ambao wako na muda mzuri.
The most affected estate is the neighboring Bustani Villas. One woman has seen it all. Flavia Mungai has been a resident here for over a decade now, and for the over 4 years, the factory has been her neighbor. She says the struggle to breathe has been real.
Before it used to be a couple of hours, and they'll do it a lot at night. But now, it's throughout the day, the whole night, 24 hours.
Owing to pollution of the air around her house, she never opens her windows. dusting her window frames, pipes and timber has been her daily routine for over 3 years. Evidence of pollution is crystal.
A lot of black soot. We have to clean every day. The surfaces, furniture, window sills, everywhere. There's a lot of soot. Every morning you wake up, that is the trend.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the country in March this year, schools have been closed, and so her 3 children are at home. And despite Bustani Villas having a beautiful playfield for the children, she can't allow them to go out. Their bikes have been locked. Whenever they want to have fun, this is where they congregate. She says whenever they get out, they come back sick.
So you will take medicines for the rest of your life, or what will you do? We can't open our windows, as you can see. All the windows are sealed, all the windows are closed. If you look around, there's nobody who opens their windows for fresh air, because there's no fresh air.
We began looking into the activities of Endmor Steel Millers following a public outcry from this neighborhood. Complaints on social media were rising by the day from residents of the estate. Images of the factory emitting black and white smoke were doing rounds on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and WhatsApp, but no one in authority seemed moved. We teamed up with data journalism organization Code for Africa to investigate the claims. Using these digital air quality monitoring machines, Code for Africa has been following the plight of Syokimau residents and their battle with Endmor Steel Millers over air. First, we commissioned an online survey for residents of Syokimau affected by pollution from the steel milling factory. The data was to help us understand how big the issue of pollution was here. Within a day, over 50 people had responded. 70% of them complained of having developed respiratory illness owing to pollution. But one case caught our attention. That of Nazir Hakada. He had lost his daughter to respiratory complications, and his son was now struggling with similar conditions.
My loss has been very painful, and I would not want any parent to go through what I've been through.
What you're seeing here now is Endmor. Good morning, 10th September 2019.
Nazir started documenting air pollution in his estate the moment children started exhibiting chest-related problems. Using his phone, he took images showing just how Endmor Steel Millers was polluting his neighborhood.
12:30 a.m. The factory is heavily working tonight. This is on the 27th night of August 2019.
Every single night, he would come out to take pictures of what was happening around his estate and the factory. He stays in Sawada Villas. He captured smoke escaping from every corner of the steel milling factory. And since the factory wasn't releasing emissions through its chimney, he captured most of the smoke, ending up in the neighboring Bustani Villas.
There are times when I'm sitting here and I decide, let me have my walk. When I go out at say 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, I realize I can't breathe. I see the factory. I have to come back in, get my camera, get my phone camera. This is how all these pictures have been coming about. It's not something that I've been sitting and wanting to target the factory. It's just at the spur of the moment is as I'm driving in, what I witness, I feel it's unbearable. Those are the recordings I've been doing. Those are the pictures I've been taking.
By this time, both his daughter and son were struggling to breathe. They had developed respiratory complications. His daughter has been hospitalized.
Doctors will not specify exactly where the problem is, but they will give you an analysis of the patient when the patient was being treated. If you look at the result that came out for both my daughter and my son, the results were one, which was chest-related infection problem.
He outrightly knew the problem was in the air they breathe.
And he asked me, have you tried finding out from the school whether any of the children have had a similar problem with chest-related problems. By then, my daughter was not schooling, it was only my son. Within that week when he was hospitalized, this was on his birthday on the 1st of April, we investigated through the school and found out that there were no similar symptoms with any of the students over there. So I went back to the doctor and I told him, this is it.
This was in October 2018. It had taken more than a year of protest and complaints on social media before the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, could begin taking action. According to court documents, on the 2nd of October 2018, NEMA inspected the facility and instructed them to stop further air pollution. On the 4th of that month, NEMA was back and found out that the factory was still polluting in spite of the earlier directive. But shockingly, NEMA went ahead to issue Endmor Steel Millers with what is known as a stack emissions license that very day, the license that essentially allowed them to continue releasing gases and particles into the air. NEMA insists the license had strict conditions attached to it and that it would be implemented only after the company had complied. Many residents here, however, wondered what made the environment regulator think that the company that ignored its initial notice was going to comply this time round. On the 27th of October 2018, NEMA arranged a meeting between Endmor Steel Mills and residents. Mitigation measures were agreed upon, but according to the regulator, it didn't work. Endmor Steel Millers ignored every part of the agreement. In January of 2019, environmental inspectors from NEMA headquarters inspected the facility again. In the observation, Endmor Steel Millers had installed an appropriate air pollution control and air passing through its cleaning system was within limits. But it turned out that not all emissions were being captured in their observations, and a huge plume of dark smoke and whitish smoke continued to jet out into the adjacent neighborhood, an indication of significant air pollution even to the naked eye rule assessment. It was marked in the report as the major problem with the operations of the facility. This was on the 24th of January 2019. A week later, on the 4th of February 2019, NEMA ordered Endmor Steel Mills to cease operations. The closure order read in part, because of the serious environmental and health risk posed by your facility to the surrounding community, the authority considers that your current operations are contravening Article 42 of the Constitution of Kenya, which guarantees everyone a right to clean and healthy environment. A day later, the facility requested for reopening, but the application was declined. At this point, Nazir's daughter was becoming critically ill. She was once again hospitalized at MP Shah Hospital in Nairobi. So weak were her lungs that she needed oxygen supplementation. Complaints sent by other residents to NEMA through email had only escalated. The facility owned by one Paul Watoro had already rushed to the National Environment Tribunal to have the NEMA order reversed, a request that was granted ex parte, that is, without the participation of the other parties to this dispute. The ruling of the tribunal on the 8th of February 2019 stated that pending the hearing and determination of the application dated February 2019 inter partes, the order of the respondent contained in the respondent's letter dated 4th of January 2019 and served on February 2019 is hereby stayed, such orders to last until the next hearing. The inter partes hearing involving the other stakeholders was set for 7th of March 2019. At the beginning of the month of April 2019, Nazir Hakada's daughter was hospitalized once again. Her lungs had collapsed, and so she had to be placed on a ventilator.
On the 6th, I was releasing my son from hospital, and I was admitting now my daughter in the same hospital under the same chest-related problems. When we took her there, she was literally choking, she was coughing. They had to put her in the ICU. And she stayed, I think, less than 48 hours, she was gone. Results came out that it was a chest-related problem and nothing could be done.
On the 9th of April 2019, Nazir paid the ultimate price. It was a day that he says will never escape his mind.
When I lost her, it totally took me to a different direction. Till today, if you meet with the community members who know me, they will tell you he is a changed man. He's lost his drive at times. I feel I've lost my drive. At times I feel I've lost my mood to do certain things.
Having lost his child, Nazir Hakada was enjoined in the case between Endmor Steel Millers and NEMA as the first interested party.
I expected when we presented that death to them, the first they could have done was to probably stop the factory from working or asking a toxicologist to work on that document and tell us where this death originated from.
On the 3rd day of May 2019, the tribunal ruled that Endmor Steel Millers desist from any further pollution. The tribunal demanded an emissions report from Endmor. The hearing of the main appeal was then pushed to the 27th and 28th of June 2019.
I would like them to bring their kids here. I would like this owner to bring his child here. I rent a place for them. We rent a place for them. And we ask them, stay here for a month. Expose your children to the conditions we are going through the kids. We've got 100 children living in this compound. Expose them to what our kids are going through. Expose them to what Sawada kids are going through, to what Bustani kids are going through, to what 5-star. All the kids within this area, we are looking at over 1,000 residents. We have kids, 500 plus. They are the weaker ones. They are our future. Your kids, the owner of the factory, he has a son, he has a daughter. Nema, they have kids. Would they expose their child, even if it's a day or a night, to this kind of a life?
The hearing was postponed again, and NEMA was ordered to procure fresh air quality assessment using an independent laboratory. The regulatory contracted SGS Kenya to conduct the monitoring. According to the report, the period of monitoring was between the 23rd and 28th of September 2019. The air pollutants measured included sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, PM2.5, PM10, and volatile organic compounds. During this period, machines from Code of Africa were also online. We also recorded some level of pollution as a plum white smoke escaped through the uncontrolled area. Given the sensitivity of the matter, the survey was to be conducted and results made available within a short time. But contrary to expectations, the results took several months to come out. And by the time the tribunal was sitting on the 4th of February 2020, the report was not yet ready. The SGS report would only be availed to the tribunal on the 19th of February 2020, with NEMA notifying the tribunal of its intention to cross-examine SGS Kenya. The report was supposed to form the basis of the hearing on the 30th of March 2020, but it never did.
Every time we go, there is a problem. Anytime we come in, the quorum is not there.
As the report was being tabled before the tribunal, we did a mobile survey at the environment surrounding the factory. As we sat for the monitoring, we met with Flavia Mungai, a resident of Bustani Villas. She was just coming in. She takes us back to the days before pollution visited them.
It was about the year 2008, 2009. We were looking for, my husband and I were looking for a place to settle. We looked around a couple of estates. We finally settled on this place at Bustani. It was really attractive to us at the time because of what it offered, yes. It's very spacious houses, beautiful environment, very green, a lot of greenery, especially considering that they have a play area for the children, a playground. That was a bonus, a plus for us, because our children were very young at the time and we were looking for such social amenities for them. The estate is very near the airport, so for me it was convenient as well as for him. I mean, I could drop him, pick him when he's coming from his trips. It was my dream house. I was very happy, the children were happy. All of us as a family were very happy and settled.
But in 2016, Endmor Steel Millers was set up, and that marked the beginning of their challenges and battles for air. When we were doing this interview and air quality assessment in February, the COVID-19 pandemic was yet to hit Kenya, and so schools were still open. Her children were not around. They were all in boarding schools. Flavia told us that she did so to ensure the well-being of her 3 sons.
You can imagine you're finishing one course of antibiotics, then again you've got another infection. So you keep going back to the doctors again and again. So even that kind of lifestyle is not sustainable.
For those who live here, Bustani Villas was a dream come true, a perfect home, clean and green and awesome for the children. It's a dream they wanted to live, but that dream has since died, and especially after Endmor Steel Millers became their neighbor. As the interview was going on, the mobile sensor machine from Code of Africa was running. The emissions were still within recommended limits at this time. PM2.5, which measures very fine particles, was reading 12.4 micrograms per cubic meter against the recommended 25 micrograms per cubic meter. The PM10, the measure for larger particles, was 46.6 micrograms per cubic meter against the recommended 50. But as the sun went further to the west, things started to change. Emissions from the factory started to be visible. And by the time we were doing a second reading, PM2.5 had now reached 36.5 micrograms per cubic meter, more than 50% above the allowable limit, while PM10 had hit 99.2 micrograms per cubic meter, almost double what is considered safe. As the sun further settled in the west, PM2.5 reading was now 115 micrograms per cubic meter, 5 times the set limit. PM10 was 163 micrograms per cubic meter against the limit of 50, just over 3 times the allowable levels.
We are dying. We are ingesting these fumes every single day. What can the government do about it?
The following day, we drove back to Syokimau during the night. It was around 8 p.m. when we hit the road. The beauty of driving along one of the city's major arteries was pulsating. But for those headed for Syokimau, it was a battle of thoughts. Their nights usually spent at the mercy of Endmor Steel Millers. We went to experience what goes on at night in Syokimau. It was not pleasant at all. First, there was too much noise from the factory. Regular loud bangs were heard from the facility. We were in Bustani Villas, but it was as if we were inside the facility. Smoke was seen escaping from all corners of the vast facility. At this point, a resident of Bustani Villas saw us and came out. He told us that the picture we were seeing was much better.
The question will be, is this a residential area or an industrial area?
We believe that we're on the residential area, and we're also human. The government should intervene and also take care of us.
He asked us to stay past 11 p.m. and see the kind of picture we will have. We agreed to stay. Right on time, 11 p.m., pandemonium. A plum grey smoke. It hovered around the factory and into the estates. It was as if it had been enclosed and it was now time to escape. Emissions from the factory made the air where we were so bad that by the time we were finishing up our monitoring, my voice had soured.
Now, we've been moving around the factory, and what we can tell you is that they have been releasing emissions from almost every corner. Like this one here, we've seen smoke, and actually still coming out.
According to the SGS Kenya monitoring report, which had been made available to the tribunal, the air quality monitoring they conducted between the 23rd and 28th of September 2019, the concentration of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, hydrogen sulfide were within the limits stipulated. But on the other pollutants involving finer particles that is usually determined by measures known as PM2.5 and PM10, the report curiously claimed that the brief given to it by NEMA did not provide for any limits. We asked NEMA why they didn't furnish SGS with measures of such limits that are important in regulating the amount of particles going into the atmosphere. In response, the authority stated, and I quote, NEMA undertakes due diligence before designating a laboratory to perform emission measurements, including assessing its capacity and knowledge of the national environment laws and regulations which provide the emission limits for these parameters in question. According to the regulations, the permissible limit for PM2.5 is 25 micrograms per cubic meter, and PM10 is 50 micrograms per cubic meter. In spite of the contradictions, the SGS report still demonstrated that the PM2.5 and PM10 were way above the permissible limits. Results from machines mounted by Code for Africa for the period show significant pollution, especially during the evening hours. The highest levels were captured on the 26th of September, where PM10 levels went up to 280 micrograms per cubic meter, more than 5 times the set limits. That evening, PM2.5 levels rose to over 100 micrograms per cubic meter, 4 times higher than the set limit of 25 micrograms per cubic meter. SGS Kenya, in response to a question we emailed them, maintained that the report only measures the natural air in the neighborhood, usually known as ambient air, and that it was yet to give a stack emission report, one measuring the contents of the actual emissions leaving the factory. Were it not for the postponement of the March 2020 tribunal sitting, then the report SGS claims is incomplete would have been used to make a decision for a matter that directly touches on people's health. SGS Kenya did not respond to the question on how long they intend to take to have a complete report, and yet a full tribunal hearing is set for July.
Now, WWF has invested a lot in matters environment, and especially when you talk about conservation. We've come here to talk to them and just understand the dangers the people of Syokimau are facing.
We are looking for Nancy Gdaiga. She is an environmentalist and the programs manager at WWF.
The PM10 are the bigger particles, like dust. So those ones, you can even feel them in your eyes. That is not as unsafe as the PM2.5. That is dangerous because it gets into your bloodstream. Yeah.
And how dangerous is it when it gets into your bloodstream?
Of course, this is what we are saying. Even for children, it would cause, for growing children, so their internal organs cannot mature the way they should. For people, that's when you start getting respiratory infections because it's in the, in the bloodstream.
For younger children, can it weaken?
It weakens the system, the whole immune system, because it weakens the lungs, because they are developing, they are not mature, so they actually get weak.
First of all, what do you hear?
I think the noise. I don't know where this is, but the noise at night. So we have residents, then we have a factory coming on board, and then I see operations at night. I don't know why we would have operations at night. Is it so that we can emit easily and without questions? Is it because they are 24-hour factory? I don't know. But it is very strange when you see, that kind of emission and especially at night when people are sleeping. And you see, when it's also night, the air is much cooler. So what happens to these emissions? They've come down, as opposed to during the day when temperatures are warmer, and this would actually rise and probably move to other areas. But at night, then it means the emissions will just fall in the almost immediate neighborhood because it's cooler. So it just cools and, occupies the neighborhood.
We asked NEMA if they have continued to monitor the factory in terms of pollution and adherence to the directive of tribunal, and the answer we got was that NEMA cannot intervene, but still in the context of NEMA, the facility should be closed. The authority was simply accepting that Endmor Steel Millers was still polluting the environment, but the matter was out of their hands. Under the registration of businesses, Endmor Steel Millers has 4 directors: Priscilla Wanjiru Njige, James Gichu Mushiri, Robert Gichu Madheri, and Paul Watoro Gichu. Gabriel Waithaka Kiama is only listed as a shareholder. We contacted Paul Watoro, who happens to be the company's chairman.
Don't look for me, can't just come to the factory anytime. We're in operation.
Okay.
And surprisingly enough, we are not working in night time now. We are working only during daytime.
Oh, you're only working during the daytime?
Yes.
So there is no smoke at night?
Not even during daytime, there's no smoke.
Okay. Even during daytime, there's no smoke?
Even the machines that we use during daytime, the pollution controls are able to arrest. Yes. Just come and over and see.
So do you release
then
through?
You tell me.
So you release through the chimney, or you release?
We don't. You cannot see our smoke. There's no way you can see our smoke. You just come and see our pollution control, Bwana.
Okay, sir. That view is obviously not shared by these residents of Syokimau. Residents like Nazir Hakada, who have paid the ultimate price. Residents who literally cannot breathe and are calling on authorities to realize that their lives matter too. Enoch Sikolia, Citizen TV, Nairobi.